Hey everybody, this is Ben here, and today I'm going to talk to you about entry-level DSLRs. Most of the cameras we're going to be bringing up are going to be second-hand. They're going to be used cameras. They might be a little bit older because of this, and the reason for it is that I'm going to keep the price point below the $500 mark. A lot of these camera bodies that are from newer cameras can cost up to $500 to $600, and you might not even be getting the best deal anyways. So if you're planning on starting your own YouTube channel, getting into photography, maybe shooting your own videos, you're going to want to have some money to spare in case you have to buy lights, SD cards, lens hoods, lenses. Things can get really expensive really fast. So having that extra buck on your bank account from saving from the camera body is going to be very useful for you. So I'm going to be bringing up some of these entry-level cameras right now. Canon T3i versus the Nikon D3300. The Nikon is a much newer camera and is probably a better entry level. You're probably going to get the best bang for your buck if you can get it used and a good price. But because the Canon T3i, you can't sleep on it, and the reason for it is if you can get a good deal on a used camera, it is old enough that you can get it for dirt cheap. And even though you can probably get better pictures on the Nikon because it has more megapixels, and it's not like 2 megapixels, it's about 24 to 18, so it can be a little bit significant. I know the sensor for the Nikon is a little bit better with the autofocus, but either way, regarding the Nikon and the Canon, they both have the LCD screen that doesn't really pop out. So if that's something that you might need, then we might need to go up to some other bodies that do have that. The Nikon D5600 versus the Canon T3i. The T3i has dominated the video market, and it's a very good entry-level camera. Both of these cameras are going to have the LCD screen, and although they're not coming from the same year, the T3i is a lot older than the Nikon, so it's not too much of a fair comparison again, but you can get a good deal on these T3i's. But the Nikon does come with, free Wi-Fi. They both come with the LCD screen, and they both will take great pictures and great video, except the Nikon is going to take better pictures. So if you want one that does both, then that would be a good place to start. And you just got to make sure you find both of these used or refurbished to get a good price point for these cameras, and then you'll be pretty good to go. D5600 and the Canon T6i. They are very close to the same features. The one thing I would do is give it to the Canon in this case, because they both have the same amount of megapixels. The Canon does have the dual auto pixel focus, but they do have a lot of similarities, such as the Wi-Fi. They both have that, and the stereo input for audio on the DSLR for both of these. Now, something to keep in mind for shooting video for either one of these, even though they have great autofocus, is that if you're just starting out, a lot of cameras you're going to get at the beginning for their lenses, you're going to probably start trying to get vintage lenses, because camera lenses will cost you, $1.50 at the very least to get started. So a lot of these lenses don't have autofocus on them, and I do know that the Canon and the Nikon have autofocus on the lens. So even though these features are on the camera, you probably won't be able to take full advantage of them if you're getting vintage lenses. So that's something to think about, and that's something, and vintage lenses should be something that you consider if you're just starting out, so you can get more focal lengths available to you at a much lower price point. The only full-frame camera that I was able to find was the Canon 5D. Most full-frame cameras will cost you close to $800 to $1,000. So I don't advocate getting one of these for a good starting point. If you're basically starting out photography, they will have about 12.8 megapixels, so you might not be getting the best picture for your buck. Now, one cool thing about these full-frame cameras is that you can take better advantage of your focal length if you're shooting video. And since most people are going to be watching at 1080p, it might be questionable whether or not you can get better video footage out of the Canon 5D, but at least when you're shooting at a 50mm lens, you'll be shooting at 50 millimeters, because when you're using a crop camera such as any of the Nikons or the Canons I mentioned, you will be shooting at a 75mm or 80mm depending on the crop factor. If you're with the Canon, it'll be the 80 millimeter. If you're shooting with the Nikon, it'll be the 75. And it isn't that big of a deal, but if you're shooting in tight spaces, it can be a kind of a bigger deal. So that's going to become up to you if you want to, take a dive into the full frame kind of scenario. But again, most full frame cameras are going to be more expensive. I'm going to be mentioning now mirrorless cameras. And one of the big advantages that they have over the DSLRs is that they're much smaller, more compact, so you can go and travel with them. And they're, in my opinion, are a little bit better than point and shoots due to the fact that if you decide you want to record video, you can have an external microphone on them. And then when you go do that, it'll be much easier to get a good video because nothing destroys your video like awful audio. Now, there are some good things and bad things about the Sony a6000. It takes great pictures, it takes great video, but there's been some issues in the past with its battery life. So some people have experienced that when you leave the camera turned off, it'll still drain the battery. It doesn't necessarily have an LCD screen. And also another bad side to the Sony is that the lenses that you can get are not as abundant as with maybe the Canon as well as with the Nikons. Now you can get adapters and get as whatever lenses you can get, and that is true 100%. It's just something to think about, and the price is very affordable for this particular camera. The G7 Lumix is the only camera body on here that does actually record in 4K. It's probably secondhand, probably the most affordable 4K you can pretty much get, as 4K can get pretty pricey. Canon doesn't even offer it till much later on in their lineups, and even the Nikons will get pretty pricey. So some things to consider for the 4K is that even though you can get really good footage when you render down from 4K to 1080p, there's going to be some issues with file size. So when you record in 4K, the size is just flat out bigger. It can cause some issues when you're editing if your computer can't handle that and process the files that big. Also, when you're talking about 4K, most people don't have 4K monitors, so most people won't be able to appreciate the footage that you're currently getting. Now, something that is cool about the 4K, other than when you render it down, is that you can get pans and you can zoom in at post because of regarding the 4K. Because when you're recording that, when you're recording in 4K, you're getting much more details. So that's something to think about. If that's something you want to invest into or not, and it's for the price point, you can't beat it. So it is it's a camera worth picking up. So that is it for today, guys. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be able to go over some more information with you, or maybe even do more reviews in the future. Have a great day.